We're Harry and Jacqui, as Anna just introduced us. Thank you for having us here today.
Yep, so my name is Harry. I am a writer at Monzo. I've been there for about a year and a half. I'm responsible for all of the writing that we do inside and out. So I sit with Jacqui in the marketing area of the business, but our responsibility goes beyond that to everything we write internally, externally, everything you'd see in the app, on the website, on our advertising, just anything that we do with words, we kind of look after that.
And I'm Jacqui, visual designer. I basically make things look nice and take care of our visual identity. I also work within the marketing team, as Harry just said, and also across the rest of the company, taking care of our internal and external communications. So I want to start this talk by asking you a couple of really quick questions, if that's okay. Could I first get a raise of hands if you know who Monzo are? Okay, that's pretty good. Can I get a now raise of hands if you have a Monzo account? Okay, that's pretty good. That could have ended up being really embarrassing. We're in a good position that most of you know who we are, so we'll dive straight into this. So I'm also hoping that most people in this room understand that we don't operate in a branding world where it's simply just throwing our logo onto a letterhead or a business card. But in the same way, at Monzo, we really need to understand that just our app and our card isn't an identifiable brand in and of itself, which can sometimes be really easy for people to forget. We need to think about how our visual brand works in a 360-degree approach. So this covers our app, our cards, campaigns, websites, social media, printer communications, swag, internal and external presentations. I could keep going on. There's a lot of stuff. And then maybe a couple of times a year, we throw our logo onto a couple of business cards. But rather than just simply showing you all of the touch points we've covered over the past 4 years, I want to talk to you about the values that we try and hold whenever we're designing anything within our visual brand identity, which are consistency, uniqueness, and modification. These three things can be a bit of a tricky balancing act for us to know when to kind of hold true to each one with each project. So let's start with consistency. So this kind of covers all the standard brand guideline things that you would think, such as color. We stick to our colors pretty truly and use them effectively. We're really careful about the use of our hot coral, especially internally. People can get really excited about it and want to cover whole slides with hot coral, but that isn't the way we really want to use it. We want to use it to kind of keep a bit of fire and magic, so we limit it to about 10% of our color palette. Also, because it is the actual hot coral is a fluorescent neon. The reproduction of that within CMYK and RGB is impossible, so there's also that factor of consistency. Also, we stick pretty true to our typography. As with most brands, it's kind of our handwriting. Although now, after seeing that Helvetica Now presentation, I'm considering maybe we should change it. That was really good. And also, finally, our illustration style. That's taken about 4 years to get to the point we are at now, where we are using a consistent illustration style. We use this across our social media, our blogs, and within our app. And also, sometimes it just generally makes sense to keep consistent with our sector style. For instance, with our bank statements, it was really important for these to look as instantly recognizable as possible so that they're always accepted as the legitimate documents that they are. For instance, we never ever want to have a situation where one of our users might have to go to the Home Office with legal documents of their address and be turned away because it doesn't look like a bank statement. So next up, we have uniqueness. Hopefully, it looks like probably all of you have seen what our card looks like. Hopefully you agree that it's pretty unique and definitely stands out amongst the rest of the crowd in the bank sector. So that's a pretty obvious one for uniqueness. But mainly I want to talk to you about how we've approached our out-of-home campaigns recently. So the one up on screen at the moment is our first kind of trial that we did towards the end of last year. This is the first time we'd ever done any major campaign work, so it was a real test for us. We kept it quite simple, quite easy. We just wanted to show our card, show that we were an app, and have a nice, catchy headline that Harry came up with. So we ended up producing 3 of these. But then, very quickly after that, we saw that all the other challenger backs did exactly the same thing. Used their hero color, presented their card, presented their app, and also used a catchy headline. And suddenly we're at a point where we obviously aren't unique. You can't recognize us out of that slide up there. So recently we have been on the mission to look at our next campaign, which hopefully you will have seen some of these out in the world recently. They were running for a few weeks and I think just finish now. So we really needed to think, how are we going to be unique with these that takes us away from the kind of generic app and card visuals that we were doing before? So number one was we looked at the way we use the conversation in a different way. So we had the conversation being between an illustrated individual talking with Monzo about how Monzo can work for them. We also made illustration the forefront of these, which really stood apart from what our other competitors were doing at the time. And we really wanted to tell a story, and we hope that this looks really unique, which, hopefully you can see that it is in this image. Right, and then next up, we have modification. So even when we are at a point where we are a really recognizable visual brand and our uniqueness still really shines through, this will not ever be a time for us to stand still. Staying in a comfort zone with our visual brand will make us feel dated and static. And unfortunately, this could happen really, really quickly. So we're constantly needing to be thinking about and preparing for what our next steps might be. So basically, we will continue to change and we will continue to evolve. But this doesn't always have to be in a completely drastic way where we completely reinvent our brand and change how it looks in every format. For instance, it could be, like recently, we added a couple of extra card colours to our Monzo Plus account, which is a new feature we've launched, just to give our customers a little bit of choice, a couple of colours to choose from at the final stage to give them a bit of difference away from our standard hot coral. But in general, our visual brand has developed pretty organically over the past 4 years, and it's in no means done. There's still loads and loads for us to do. We're at a point now where our national brand awareness is at 28%, which is up from 20%, which it was in January, which is a massive leap for us, and we're really proud of that. But we also need to remember we're kind of like living in a bit of a weird bubble in London. We're kind of seeing everyone around the underground using our cards and also hearing everyone talk about us. But we're in no means a nationally recognized brand and definitely not a globally recognized one. So actually, within our values, the consistency is still really, really important to us, and we need to hold on to that. For instance, with our latest out-of-home campaign, it's probably been received completely differently in places like Birmingham and Bristol than it has in London. But ultimately, that's what makes it such a great challenge for us. But it's the kind of challenge that will never, ever, ever be won with just design alone. It involves a bunch of allied disciplines with great cooperation and collaboration of a diverse team, which leads me perfectly into introducing you to Harry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about writing at Monzo in a second, but first of all, I want to talk about some friends of mine and friends of yours probably as well. Innocent Drink. So when it comes to writing, when it comes to tone of voice, verbal identity, they're kind of always held up as the standard bearer, and they are in many ways. They've also made my life incredibly difficult for about the last 6 or 7 years. And that's because before I came to Monzo, when I worked in a consultancy, once a week a client would come to us and say, we've heard about tone of voice, we understand it's important to be consistent in how we communicate and have it differentiate ourselves from our competition. We've heard that Innocent have a great tone of voice. We would like you to give us Innocent's tone of voice, please. We'd say, okay, that's interesting. So what do you do? And they'd say, well, we make ballistic missiles. And we go, well, first of all, we don't want your business, thank you very much. But also, maybe the tone of voice of a drinks company that started in a field, give 10% of their profits to charity, have, the kind of carpeted grass all around their offices, isn't the right one for a weapons manufacturer. And they said, oh, that's really interesting, we didn't think of that. Because actually what Innocent are really, really good at is not necessarily what their tone of voice is. Their tone of voice happens to be funny and deprecating and interesting, and they are very, very on point with it all the time, but it's the consistency that actually makes them stand out. They do this everywhere. You buy a bottle, you tip it over, it says, stop looking at my bottom. You write to them as a customer service thing, and they respond to you in that same tone of voice. They never let it slip. They are really, really phenomenally consistent with it. And that is what makes it really, really effective. What your tone of voice is doesn't matter nearly as much as whether you actually live with it everywhere. If you have a great tone of voice in 10% of what you do, you don't have a tone of voice, because the other 90% is actually the experience people have of you. Illustration to bring that to life a little bit before we get to us. There's a company in Manhattan called Park Fast. They own some garages around, and they've got these adverts up where they say, warning, they're subverting a warning sign. It's not really a warning. They're playing with what you'd expect. And they're saying, better parking spot in inverted commas, because they know you're arguing with the person in the car next to you. There is a better parking spot. No, there isn't. I never should have got married. My mother was right. And, they know who you are and where you are, and they're empathizing with you. And they've presented that to the world with this font of visual identity. I don't know about you. It's warning. 3 exclamation marks, so you know it's serious. Shouty capital letters. Vehicular traffic, trespassers being prosecuted. It's the kind of very aggressive capital letters, shouty, different, very legalese tone, as if there's a battalion of heavily armed lawyers around the corner waiting to jump out on you. I haven't done a big audit of park-fast writing, but can I get a show of hands, please, in a second, for what does your gut instinct tell you? Which one of these, the first one or the second one, is more representative of what they're really like as a business? Hands up for the first one, please, if you think this is who they really are. Hands up for a couple of people. Hands up for the second one, please. Right, yeah. This is how we feel. And that's the parking garage. You times that by infinity for a bank. No one believes, really, that the nice, shiny bit is true, the veneer, the branding stuff, because the vast majority of what they see feels like this. And part of that is to do with the inconsistency of how, especially banks, behave, but also it's this communication stuff, right? You know that the adverts are going to be good, but then when you get into a bit of debt, this is how they come for you. You know that the direct mail is going to be very slick, but when you get into T's and C's, it's going to read like this. And so all of the nice stuff that the money gets spent on is worth less as a result. So actually, we do have a tone of voice. It is published on our website. We put it out live as part of our commitment to transparency. But what the tone of voice is, I'm not really going to talk about because it's not very important. It's actually not particularly distinctive, I don't think. We just try and sound like nice people. But what we really, really focus on more than anything else is trying to bring it to life everywhere we possibly can, because otherwise, people won't believe it's true, and we won't see the benefit of it as a result. So just because we are a regulated bank and a regulated industry, there's obviously some things we have to say, but we do still have more freedom than people think. So last year when we were upgrading people from prepaid cards to current accounts, we sent one email every day for about a month, which is not best practice, but we were kind of desperate. And I was locked in a room writing those emails, and by about the fourth day in that room, I had a bit of a breakdown. And so we did a poem. We wrote a poem, a limerick trying to entice people to upgrade, because I'd run out of other stuff to say, thinking, okay, well, this is within our brand. It's kind of interesting. It's not what you'd expect. And it worked. We had people saying, brilliant, I'm going to upgrade. Also, this person is kind of making my life more difficult than it necessarily needed to be. But this version of the email got twice as many click-throughs and actual upgrades as the 3 that we'd sent the 3 days previously. Because we stuck to what we actually believed in. We wanted to be interesting. We wanted to be a little bit different. And so we got the benefit from it. The little nooks and crannies of writing are where I'm really, really focused. So things like release notes. Every time you update the app, most businesses say, oh, bug fixes, performance improvements. That's fine, but that's a wasted opportunity. So we say things like this, fixed a silly bug. People say, I love it. And then people literally switch their current account to us because of the release notes that we do. Because we're not competing in a very heavy field here. Jacqui showed the example of all our competition doing the same kind of advertising, spending lots of money on it. No one's really thinking about this stuff. And it just takes a minute to follow through with what you believe, and we get the benefit from it this way. And then also the serious stuff. Serious and formal, not the same thing. You don't have to suddenly sound like an 18th century cyborg lawyer when you're doing T's and C's. In fact, if you do that, you're not following through with what you say you believe. We say we're transparent and inclusive, so we can't do 94-page T's and C's, otherwise that is just objectively not true, right? How you write is tangible evidence of what your values are. So our T's and C's are about 1,000 words long, objectively readable by an 11-year-old. And as a result, again, people talk about this on our behalf. They say people swamp customers with T's and C's. That's why I open the Monzo app as much as social media. It's intimate and friendly everywhere, not just when we're trying to show off or get people something. And just to finish with one more little bit of showing off, because this is my favorite quote we've ever had. Somebody talking to us about the business banking accounts we're about to open saying, it's the great technology, but honestly, the reason I'm desperate for a business account is because I love your tone of voice. You're doing things no one else is. That is not the advertising. It's the follow-through in everything that we do, which really makes a difference. And it really does make a difference in banking because people don't like banks, people don't trust banks, unfortunately. 36% of people in the UK trust that their own bank operates in their best interests. That's from YouGov in 2017. People are usually surprised it's that high. And partly it's because of things banks have done that are a bit naughty. But also it's to do with this weird split personality communication thing that we're really trying to fix more than anything. And so for us, the consistency of what we do matters just as much as anything else. Rather than the distinctiveness for now, the consistency is the focus, because that's where we feel we can have a bit of clear water between us and the competition. So those are the two kind of twin arms of what we're doing with the design and the words. And we'll leave on to Jacqui to talk about how we actually do a bit of collaboration together.
So there are plenty and plenty of instances where we designers have to run straight over to writers for some help. For instance, so our card colour we call hot coral. We've been doing that for many a year now. And so when we introduced our 2 new plus card colours, which I just showed you on a previous slide, we thought maybe they should have the honour of a name too. So we went straight over to Harry, and he was really kindly set up a naming process through which we came up with Midnight Sky and Lagoon Blue. And we made sure that these all sat cohesively as a set together.
Absolutely. And there will, again, be times when, as writers, we desperately need the help of design because people don't like reading very much, and the better it looks, the more likely people are to pay attention. We have a big focus internally at Monzo on supporting people's mental health. We work in a quite intense environment. It's very fast-paced. Making sure that people are comfortable and confident and healthy is important. So we wanted to put up some billboards, some posters internally to remind people it's okay to take a break. Remember to look after yourself. It's okay to be wrong, to cry, to feel sad, to go home. So we wrote those signs, but then they just didn't quite stand out enough. So we went to Jacqui and her team, who very kindly designed these up for us. And you will find these all over our offices, inside on the back of toilet doors, in the cafeteria, up in some of the meeting rooms, just as a little reminder that what we actually believe we're trying to follow through with in everything we do.
But the best thing is that we're going to be together forever, which Harry hates. But seriously, for most things, we tend to work very closely together through the whole process. We even sit pretty much straight next to each other, which he also hates. But that allows us to have a great creative process together. So an example of this is, again, these out-of-home ads that we did recently. We were involved with a creative agency, which we outsourced, but we were involved with the whole process from beginning to end, through which me and Harry pretty much went to every single meeting, so that we made sure that the creative concept, the words, and the design all worked seamlessly together throughout the whole thing, basically. Another example.
And yeah, so these are the tube panels that we've had up for the last few weeks. Next week, our TV ads go live, the first time we've ever done TV advertising. And we had a bit of an interesting challenge there of, do we have a voiceover? Do we have a voice of Monzo? If we do, who is that person? How does that work? Is it one person? A lot of kind of quite in-depth conversations and a bit of arguing actually went on internally, which was really good because it's a big decision. We did actually eventually settle on having a voiceover and a voice of Monzo, went through quite an in-depth process, but it was really good to be able to look through all the touch points that we have of all of our writing that we've done previously, internally and externally, so that we could get a really rich sense of what this person would sound like. And I'm not going to show you it because I can't show you the TV ad before it goes on TV, but keep an eye out from the 22nd of May because they will be on TV from then. Thank you very much.